Is this an official meeting?
Yeah, you just opened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody got any comments about the minutes from the last meeting?
Just a spelling I mentioned to Grace. Didn't change the essence
Okay.
of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve. I approve.
Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Maureen? Maureen?
I abstain. I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
Okay, so kind of unanimously approved.
And the next is treasurer's report.
No change from the last report.
And then it would be the town's report, town planner. I was planning on foregoing it today to allow for discussion to take place. And we don't have Jasifa on with us today either to give the regional housing coordinator report.
So do you motion to forego your? Okay,
It's not an action item. I don't know, any questions about anything that I've talked about previously? Things that I worked
Just an
on?
update on the chapter 40B.
Yeah, expect, so that was on for last night. Zoning board had, they typically meet on Wednesdays, but because of the holiday, they met last night and Thursday. It was a brief meeting with regard to that, as we transition to preparing for basically a decision to be rendered by the board at their next meeting, July 17th. So the applicant showed up to just give a brief update as to things that they've been working on. Addressing the civil engineering comments to which they have for the peer review. They've addressed all the comments. And so that was basically it. So a little bit of back and forth with our attorney in drafting, getting the draft decision ready for that. And so the draft decision for that will be up on the website, probably hopefully by next week in draft form. So everybody will be able to access it and, give it a look over. And if anybody who's been following the process can make suggestions, comments, questions, bring it to the next meeting or address it before then. This is an opportunity for everybody to be involved in putting that decision together ahead of the July 17th meeting.
Michael, what's the general consensus, do you think,
As far
as
as,
far as a positive decision is concerned?
yeah, I think I anticipated there'll be an approval with conditions. I mean, that's kind of where we've been heading this whole time, is to just nail down the conditions of that decision rather than denial versus approval. So it's typically approval with conditions. Good. And that's, unless there was other questions,
Just one more briefly on the RFP for the demolition.
yes. So I just got, I think I forwarded that to everyone just now.
Okay.
So if you haven't looked at your email, I just got the asbestos report back today. So now that I have that, we can proceed with the demolition.
They found
Did
nothing.
find anything?
No, they did find it.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay, what, the floor tiles?
No, actually, the floor tiles were all gone.
Oh, putty?
I don't know.
Was it
Ceiling?
putty?
It was the basement floor
Okay,
clearly had tiles on it at some point. You can
Okay.
see the outline, right? But they weren't there anymore.
okay.
But no, it was the roof shingles and the paper, the roofing paper has
Okay.
cement. And there was a few other things that I'm forgetting, but that was,
Lead?
it's assumed that it has lead because of
Okay.
the age of the.
Of course,
Okay.
yes, good idea.
So to follow up on Brian's question, now that that's done,
Now that that's done, right, I can proceed with the RFQ for the actual demolition, which will include in part abatement of the asbestos that was identified.
can you just go back to the people that applied before and provide that documentation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we don't have to start from scratch and do the advertising again or anything?
Oh, my assumption is that we do have to do that, but I'll obviously make the people aware who are pulling that information and we're ready to bid on it. We'll
Okay,
feed that information to them because they still have their contacts.
and how much did the survey cost?
Well, it was still the quoted amount of like 2,000 to 3,000, but I don't have an invoice yet.
Invoice, yeah, okay. I am sorry for being late. I had a work call and then I totally forgot how to parallel park.
Mm.
And there was a person waiting for space. And I'm like, it was like embarrassing. I did not bring the agenda with me.
Oh.
So, and you're not bringing that when you go in there.
I'm not.
Yes, before. It's okay. Come on, I did put my glasses in here. Okay. So,
We just heard Chris was ready for the conversation. That was that.
okay. Just a question, because I don't like to redo everything what already been talked about. Did anyone, Brian, did you, it's not on the agenda, so I don't know if we can do it, but you give an update of the
Housing conference?
Yeah,
Sure. We'll put it in somewhat order of the lectures I attended. One, I was very surprised, very positively at the, and shouldn't be surprised, the level of interest in the, I think they were surprised by the number of attendees, like 250 people went. Also, I was very impressed with, and this is just me being naive on this topic, is the structure of the, and this is what my takeaway is, Chapter 40B and other policies that the state has put in place, and also future bills, the housing bill. A lot of enthusiasm amongst all the attendees. And I was very impressed by the level of like the state government and its connection and what it's trying to do to solve the housing approval bill. Now, I shared this with the table of professionals, and they kind of like tempered my enthusiasm and said, yes, there is there, but then there's the execution part. So, but there's a very positive takeaway. The other thing is that got a number of different resources that we can tap into. The Mass Housing Partnership, I think that's what it is, they put on the conference.
Yeah.
And they offer their services in quick calls, quick advising. We have USECA too. So need to tap into those, I think more. And then there's a lot of excitement about the ADUs, because I think that previous day, there's been discussion in the housing bill that they were approved by right. I think it's like a 900-foot approval. That's what they're targeting. And then there was a presentation on the topic, but then there was a gentleman has a company. It's called Backyard ADUs, and that's his business. He goes around New England building ADUs in communities that are already friendly to them. So that was a very interesting topic, that there's already a business in place, and I'm sure there's several others. But I would imagine that would be something that would quickly take off, which I hope, so it'll be easier and hopefully can reduce the cost. I mean, obviously, definitely cheaper than a house, but it's still not cheap. It is a house, and I thought it would be significantly cheaper.
much worth it.
Yeah, I want to say, don't quote me, but I think it was around 300,000.
And was that from soft, is that like?
800 square feet, that's the sweet spot. They call it 800. That's what they like to do.
But was that just for the modular unit or was that?
No, it was
for
everything.
the site? Oh,
Yeah.
that actually is cheap. All
I-
things considered, yeah.
300, yeah, it's very good.
And there are 2 bedrooms. It was interesting because they had some site, floor plan, I should say. And then also too, showed ADUs within sites. And they looked very nice.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased to see that at least the ones they showed us are obviously going to be very appealing, and they were. And then the other presentation that stuck with me was a woman talked about financing. Yeah. It's pretty complicated, but something that took away
Of course, it stuck with you, it was financing.
Yeah. was the magic, well, sounds like the magic sauce is tax credits.
Okay.
So the federal, the state, and then some grants, but, so they did a pie chart of how most of the affordable housing projects are funded. And they said the key is the federal tax grant and the state tax grant
Okay.
to be successful and to get people interested in it. And then there's like another investor market that buys these, I guess, bonds. probably.
Okay,
And that was really interesting. It's a whole new world.
yeah.
I was not aware that existed.
Okay.
The other thing, and hopefully it will change with the mass housing bill, is if that's the magic of making these successful projects go forward, they're, on the federal side, they're very limited in terms of the dollars that each state gets.
Mhm.
And so they want to maximize how that is given to the projects. But you could accelerate affordable housing production, and this was my takeaway, if the federal government would give a lot more, or more. And like I said, I don't think, I wrote it down, but I don't have it with me, was not an eye-popping amount that Massachusetts receives from the federal government for these tax credits.
Mhm.
So the 2 billion and 3 billion that, I'm not sure how that is earmarked in the mass housing bill and what will go forward too. But I was hoping that was significantly more than these federal tax credit amounts that Massachusetts is currently receiving. So there's a lot, the
Okay.
topic is obviously it's very broad, and many aspects to it.
Yeah.
But it was very helpful. I would highly recommend that others go.
Okay. Okay. Don't be required. Okay. Did you bring back business cards?
I did not.
Oh,
I brought back one.
okay. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Brian, or I don't want to also keep the habitats for you too long?
It was,
Okay. Okay, so the agenda item is discussion with Habitat for Humanity regarding RFP bid submittal for the redevelopment of 28 Harvard Avenue North. And so, first of all, we appreciate you resubmitting the proposal. And we just wanted to, the challenge I think this board was having was the cost to the Affordable Housing Trust is, and we were, I think, wanted to discuss with you if there were any ways that we could relook at that, negotiate terms of that contract. The Affordable Housing Trust was already put, and by the end of the day, with the demolition, we'll put about $250,000 into the site. And from reading your proposal, that you would require is on $150,000 approximately from the 140, I think, to move forward with this. Which, is just for one unit, which is a lot of money for one unit when we're trying to build many more than 4 units. So we were hoping we could, talk about it and see if there's ways to either re-examine what the burden to either the CPC, because that's money that we rely on, and the Affordable Housing Trust in funding the project. I think does that encapsulate why we're here today? So.
So the main issue is basically the town's portion of the project budget.
Yeah.
But it's fairly typical for what we do with towns, and have the town sort of share, especially for the initial part, where it help us get started in the project. So it's quite helpful to get the project going. And then billing is usually done as a progress kind of thing, so it's not upfront all at once. But as we go through the project and complete various phases, then there's an invoice for that part of it. So it wouldn't be a burden that you receive kind of upfront, right? It'd be something spread over time.
But we were under the impression that if we donated the land to Habitat, and I think we were talking about waivers for water and sewer, that would offset the remaining amount that we would have to give. And then, when I looked at your proposal, it basically is we give the land for $1 and we pay a lot of money on top of that. And I think so we were expecting, but, the price tag for the Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC, by the end of the day, if this isn't changed, will be about $400,000. If you look at what our investment in that land has been.
And sort of the demolition is very high.
Well, how much was the demolition?
well, we're also, this was purchased at an auction, so the original purchase.
The acquisition price.
Oh, yeah, no, that.
And that's the primary.
So-
you basically bought the land at fair market value.
We bought, I think it was a little bit over, from what I understand. We bought the land. And then we had to pay for all the costs from, all that stuff.
yeah.
And then we had to carry insurance costs and everything since the land was purchased. And so, that total by the end of the day is a little shy of 200,000. And then if you look at the other costs with the demo and with the asbestos survey, the hazardous material removal. I mean, I'm just spitballing it, but I think it'll probably be in the $250,000, just to have a site that we can, give start dollar. And so that's why, so we've already, and there is a limited pool of money the Affordable Housing Trust has, and we'd rather get ambitious and try to leverage larger scale developments rather than invest, this much money in a one unit. And I understand, we looked, based on our last conversation on, some of the material you provided, that a duplex isn't really feasible, but even a duplex would only be 2 houses or 2 units. And so,
It's a tough property to develop there.
Yeah.
And certainly I looked at it was, how can we maximize
Yeah.
the space?
Yeah.
But if you consider it's wet in front,
Yeah.
you have ledge in back,
yeah,
it's a tough site to try to go bigger on.
Yeah.
So that's why it's single family.
no, I can't. I mean, my opinion is optimal. It's just.
The construction budget?
Yeah.
And Paul can speak to any details on it, because he prepares construction budgets for us, but we've built the same floor plan
Mhm.
in multiple locations
Mhm.
and multiple instances. We've built that floor plan as a single, a duplex and a triplex. And so the construction costs reflected in the construction budget,
Mhm.
they're pretty accurate. It's just, there's no wiggle room in construction costs. We're not aware of any way to do the construction for less than what the construction budget is.
Is it possible I mean, 2 options would be maybe to reduce the size. I know that there's all sorts of environmental, but I think that's required in the inspector code now. I don't think there's any way you can avoid those, but either reduce the size or the other option, to look at reallocating the share. Like increase the cost to the potential buyer, increase the cost, the price from other sources. I don't know if there's any state funding. Brian was just talking about tax credits, and I'm like, I don't know if there's any tax credits available.
So I think it's pretty difficult to get tax credits for a single unit development.
Okay,
Actually, I think it's difficult to get tax credits for construction for sale. I think, again, I happen to be a member of the Housing Trust in Westboro, so I kind of have picked up a little bit of federal tax credits particularly tend to be very heavily oriented toward rental. And oh, by the way, they're oriented toward high density rental. The high density being, I don't know, 10 units per acre, which is pretty high. I mean, I would be surprised if there's any 5 units per acre anywhere in Upton. I don't know. You know better than I do.
Yeah, they probably-
without the MBTA community.
I mean,
Probably around the corner from this site, honestly.
Yeah.
In West Upton, but yeah,
right.
your point taken.
So again, tough to get tax credits.
Okay,
There are like community development block grants and such that the town might be able to source. I don't really know. Again, I'm not. We haven't. Most Metro West and Worcester County communities have had a hard time getting CDBG,
Yeah.
community development block grants. City of Worcester has been more successful.
we're too rich.
And then the other alternatives, I mean, the fundraising potential in Upton is not real strong. Unless I'm missing something, there's not a lot of industry. There's not a lot of industrials or other charitable organizations, so our development folks would be strained to try and raise additional fund and get more donations.
About either reducing the size or increasing the amount we sell it for.
Increasing the amount we sell for is kind of tough because we target 30 to 60% AMI for the family and their monthly costs are 30%. Targeted.
Under 40B, what is it, 80%?
It's 80%. I mean,
But,
Habitat,
so we don't typically go to 80.
Habitat hasn't done any, I mean, Habitat, you know, their max is like 60%. We typically end up selling for around 50. And we usually end up we're usually talking like a 3% down payment. And Habitat usually subsidizes about half of that, anywhere from a third to a half of the down payment. We end up subsidizing because the clientele, the families we serve have a hard time raising. You know,
Do we sell to people who need the housing the most or do we sell to people that can best afford to pay for it?
No, and we sell to the people,
Don't.
this is a weird situation. Because there's, I mean, what we're doing by dedicating this much money to a single property is we're taking housing away from people who really need it. And so I think that's why I'm looking at it, there's things you can do to make the numbers work. And if that includes, I mean, is there anything that prohibits you from raising it to 80%?
yeah, our Habitat charter, our board, we'd have to go, the board would have to make a decision
1 second.
to violate the Habitat charter. The Habitat International has set a limit at 60. And our board has adopted that limit, so. I mean, we could look at the number, I don't think the numbers would be influenced a great deal by going up. But I don't know.
Is there, I was looking at, trying to understand, for the home sale net proceeds, 186, that's 40%. And then the expected sale price is 285. So it's like $100,000. What is that? Where is that? Is there any opportunity there?
And the expected sale price?
Well, the expected sale price, depending on what the AMI is, but let's say it is 285, that's, I think,
Right.
that's probably 30%, I think, maybe, I think that's what.
30%, I'm not sure what mortgage rate folks assumed on this case, but no, the expected sale price is based on the latest housing and urban development national numbers.
Mhm.
So there's not much flexibility there.
So I just wondering, so that expected sale price of 285, that's in the document. And then if you take the 40% of the budget pie, that's identified as coming from the home sale net proceeds. There's a difference of 285 to 186, so it's almost $100,000. What is that? Is that an opportunity to use that? That difference?
Sorry, I'm confused. Typically, to build a home, I think your budget's like 490 something.
460.
460, so 460 is to build a home.
Mhm.
It just subtract 285. And the balance we have to raise either through a grant from the housing trust or by public donations of various types. And our development folks have contacts with major donors. I don't know that, I mean, the type of major donors we're talking about are folks like Worcester. I can't remember the name of the Worcester fund. Worcester has a major donation fund. We have
Greater Worcester, I mean, the Worcester Foundation, the.
Worcester Foundation.
Yeah.
We have
Community Foundation, yeah.
we have relationships with a couple other foundations. So that includes foundation money and corporate grants and also a lot of aggressive fundraising.
Can I ask a question? Probably should know this, but your 6 months worth of factory said, does that include purchasing the land?
No.
I mean, there was a hitch on it.
It's $500.
That's what it said. I know, but that's a normal procedure.
They got this holding off until.
Yeah, I know what it says on
And then I'll recognize.
Okay.
In our experience, if you buy land at current market value, it's impossible to build affordable housing on that land.
No, we're not asking to do that. We're just asking for it to be at least a partial, I mean,
Yeah,
for us to, I think that with the money that we've invested in this and expect to invest in it, it's going to get our total trust down to about $700,000. And we're starting to get very aggressive about, again, building more, rental type units and, to get, to be able to allow people who can't afford to live it up to. And so, I don't want to pour another, I mean, personally, I don't know how the rest of the board, I don't want to pour another 145,000 out of that shrinking pool into a single unit of affordable housing. So I'm looking for other options. And from listening to your conversation, lowering the construction budget isn't feasible. Lowering,
Can't step away.
yeah,
The construction budget doesn't,
yeah.
I mean, you'd think it would vary linearly with the square footage, but it really doesn't.
Oh, no,
So.
yeah, no, I believe you guys. Increasing the project cost, the purchase price is not an option. And so.
Well, we have necessarily ruled that out.
Well,
Well,
yeah, if
I
I,
thought it was at 30% in the offer.
If I-
It could go off to 60.
well,
No,
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 no, no,
We're looking at a maximum family, families with a maximum of 60% of area median.
And when did that increase the expected sale price?
That's in the expected sale price.
Oh, this is already written with 60%.
Yeah.
So
So the 60% AMI,
Okay.
and we want their monthly costs, housing costs to be
Oh, that's
30% of their
Okay.
income.
So this is already written at 60.
So.
It is.
I've got one other question. Do you usually have property that is undeveloped? So is it unusual to get a place that's got to be, got a house that needs to be demolished? No.
We've done both.
Okay, so we're paying the demolition costs.
No.
Is that rolled into your cost of development? No.
No, not include it.
Okay.
And the hookups and everything else in town, when we first met, we talked about the town waiving the cost of water and sewer hookups.
We can
Permit
talk about
fees.
trying to waive the permitting fees and talk about crediting that against the contribution from the community.
But that's
That's a
only
conversation.
couple thousand
Yeah,
bucks. That's not.
we
that's
need
not
to
such-
commit-
Yeah, what's it like $4,000 for the hookup?
But I did include costs for the excavator to install the lines and connect the house and all of that, but we're not out on the street doing tie-ins.
But
And we're not paying a fee for sewer connection fee or water connection fee.
Oh, so that's
It's
not mechanical. So even
The
if we,
assumption in the budget is those permits are covered by the town or waived by the town.
so that's all already included in your budget. So nothing that we've talked about previously. So we can't say we'll waive, the permit fees will
It
waive
doesn't
it
reduce our cost.
because we're already giving them to you free in these
That's
estimates.
the assumption in the budget.
So, hang on, but if you look at the budget, the construction cost numbers come out of that just a hair over $300 a square foot.
Yeah.
If you go talk to your town assessor, $300 a square foot for the buildings is a very conservative number.
Wait, no, I'm not,
Okay, so,
I'm not doing,
and again, our ability to fundraise, we're gonna have to fundraise a substantial amount.
Yeah.
And it'd be very difficult for us to commit, given the community demographics and such.
Could we, just want to, still in my head, working that home sale net proceed. And then where you just, Hank, maybe help. 285 is the expected sale price.
Yep.
And 465 is the total budget, not land included. So additional 465 is being looked upon. So that's the delta of 180. Right? Is that what we're trying to fund? Is that because the budget up top is gets the full 465?
I'd have to look at the budget again to see what the total project cost, what's in the budget and total project cost. We usually look for 30%. 30%, right? So is what we usually look for.
Sometimes 50, other towns we've done where the town supported 50% of the project.
Right.
Mhm.
But again, if you want us to go to look at the numbers and come back to Michael and say, hey, here's what the flexibility we have, we could do that.
But I think that'd be helpful, Hank. And then also, if you could, there's probably something that Jessica coming through on the paper. Of the total price of 465 minus the 285
We
comes to
can,
180.
I could provide Michael with
465.
we can go through an analysis and then and put together a more cogent picture of
That'd be helpful.
where the costs are, where the funds are coming from. I mean, your other option would be to again, just being completely honest with you, I mean, you might try and find a developer who's willing to do this project at an 80% AMI. I mean, you can talk to MHP or others. I haven't talked to MHP about that for quite a time. But most developers won't touch a single family home at 80% of AMI.
Mhm.
They just won't go near it.
Just my personal view is that I want you to take away our questions is that we want to do this.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't have much funding. We also too have some costs into this that is not your issue, but it is a situation. It's a board that's just been around for a year, several years of not being active. So we want to make sure that we use these funds wisely. And then to Kathy's point, we're not looking at $360,000 town paying for a $600,000 project. And if we could, and the other key, in my opinion, is we're well below our 10% SHI, not a problem either. This will help by 1 unit. Whereas our goal is we need to get above that 10% to avoid the unfriendly 40Bs. So that's one of my priority goals. And this limited funds that we have, it's hard to say that's where we should be spending this to gain the 1 unit. But on the flip side, though, if we can make this work, it's, I think, a huge win for the town, for the board, because the publicity of what affordable housing is, seeing it being constructed in the community, getting people involved, and using it as a focal point for our advocacy program that we'll have to do to be able to get some of those 40Bs, or however we do this in the future, I think would be very helpful to us. And that's just my viewpoint.
Quite honestly, I think you'd also have difficulty finding a developer who would develop a market rate home on that property.
We can't
Oh,
sell
yeah.
the market rate home.
I know, but
Yeah.
I haven't read the trust documents, not familiar with the trust documents, but typically the trusts are allowed to dispose of the property if they choose, if they have a piece of property that they decide they don't want to develop, I believe they have the ability to. So
But we
you could go to a market rate, but I would guess you have difficulty finding a market rate that also who would want to buy the property and then develop it, because it's not an easy property.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the problem, it's also the problem that we would have, we're not selling it for its intended use.
Okay.
We have to sell it, we have to recoup all our costs,
Yeah,
which again is now, after we demolish it, is to do everything that's close to $250,000. And that piece of property is not worth $250,000.
Okay.
I do have a question for you based on what Brian said, because now I'm totally confused. And I'm not a numbers person, so I didn't look at this until I listened to Brian for the third time, and then all of a sudden it clicked. You have the total project cost estimated at 465. Okay, and you're looking at selling it for how much?
285.
Maximum
285?
maximum selling price is 285. I don't believe we actually expect to sell it for 285. Because the 285 is based on 60. I
60%.
have to double check on what the 285 is based on. That may be based on 80. I have to go ask, because I didn't do those numbers.
Okay.
Would new housing be that cheap, even if it was at full market at 60% is 285?
I mean, the cost on the property, the 460, not including the land, you're not gonna build it for less than.
Oh, I understand that, but just the going rate for a new house is how much right now?
I mean,
Maybe
the
the number
rate-
is $800.
That's what I'm saying, so 60% of the going rate isn't 285, right?
But they don't do
285
it.
is-
So 60% is not market value, 60% is the area median income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So area median income,
And that includes.
Family's income. So
area median income in this part of the world is probably 110, 120.
Yeah,
So let's be family of 4, so it's 120, 50% is $70,000 a year. You take 30% of that, you're looking at $21,000 a year for housing cost. You're not gonna write a very big mortgage for that amount of money. Not with a 3% down payment. So, but what we can do is give you a complete sources and uses of funds.
That would be useful, but before we talk further, Dick was very patiently sitting there, raised his hand about 20 minutes ago, and I wanted the board to ask his questions first, so.
Well, one of the reasons the last board, didn't do anything is because one died, 2 left town, and it left 1 person, myself, and I couldn't do anything. We had talked to Habitat. We looked at everything they had to offer. We did, on a lot of the items, we sent out to contractors how much it would cost to do. And I think we found it was about 10% for every item on the list that we could get a local contractor to do. So we decided to write up an agreement through the town manager at the time, Derek. He has in his computer the wording for contacting contractors, local contractors, and handing out the plans that we want. An agreement to give them the land, and an agreement that they would meet the final numbers so that people could buy the house. That's why we went to a duplex in the area, because that gave us more bang for the buck. Because we had paid $160,000 for that land at the time it was a crazy price. So that's one of the reasons that we didn't do anything for the last 3 years, because there was only one member, me.
Yeah.
And this, well, that's the reason. I couldn't go to a contractor and say, here we go, here's agreements. Who wants to bid? Who wants to jump in? I heard that one of the members at the time had talked to certain contractors in town, and they had given a little interest to the fact that they would, because they assumed that they could get a lot for nothing and use X amount of dollars for a tax write-off on their taxes.
Yeah.
And then sell the house for a price, or a reasonable price. But we never went through that.
Can I ask a question? Why did you purchase it in the first place?
Because it was for sale and we were looking for a good piece of land. The selectmen gave us a piece of land on Orchard Street. And even to walk up, you had to remove ledge. And it wasn't a suitable place for anybody to build. So again, we chose that. We were bidding. The chairman was bidding at the time on this particular piece of land, was a realtor, and I think got carried away because I would have stopped bidding at 100,000 on that land.
I agree. Is it, okay, so, because we did send out the RFP and we didn't get any other, you know, I really do appreciate Habitat coming to the table, giving us something to work with. Whenever I come into this building, my nose starts to run. You know, so, you know, was there any reason that you didn't like consummate a contract with Habitat before? Was it just that everyone left and the pandemic hit and
No, the expense,
the same thing?
as you're talking about today, it was too expensive. And we didn't have as much money as you do have now.
My comment.
Understand 30%, 60%, I finally.
Yeah, it's,
This is the tough spot. Okay, I finally
there's nothing
understand.
to do with market value.
This is like Massachusetts. It's just, this is crazy.
And I just commented, you're welcome to talk with construction contractors. When you do, you ought to take into account that in order to get the house that you built to count to your SHI, you need to apply to UHLC via the, and I believe, I don't remember whether this one takes an LIP or an LAU, but it takes a filing. That's not easy to do, it's very difficult, very complex. So somebody has to do that filing. You have to write and execute a fair housing marketing plan typically doing that set of activity with a consultant is $10,000-12,000.
We already, is
So-
that included under greater, the CMRPC contract?
To do
To
that.
do-
sort of-
yeah.
No,
It isn't, okay.
No, and, you know, again, we'll do full sources and uses for you. I'm not familiar with exactly where things like those expenses are included.
Yeah.
So again,
So you're talking about those expenses on top of what's already here?
I'm not quite sure. I've got to go talk to our finance department and understand what expenses they included where. Because that's why I would suggest that we would do a sources and uses. Hey,
Yeah,
here's where we expect to get funding from, and here's the places and we kind of simplify that.
I think I can do the chair. I can probably source a lot of get a good picture of what all the permitting will cost. By getting together with, Amy upstairs and, we just, the select board just passed a new permitting fee schedule, so, which makes things a little bit easier for us to work with. And so by having a total, even just this 465 number, we can arrive at what a typical building permit fee would cost, which I'm thinking would be around 4,000.
It's 11-12% usually.
Yeah, but that's just the straight building and then the other fees on top of that, which would get to that number.
but he already said that we're giving those to him already,
Okay.
that we can't deduct it from the total.
Oh,
It's already-
I misheard.
I think that's in the.
I misheard.
Again, let us do a sources and uses.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
I
It's
didn't,
in the, what,
I would require, I'm familiar with what's in the construction budget. I didn't do the rest of the budgets, so
Okay.
apologize for not being prepared on that subject, but we'll
yeah,
give
now
you
I'm
the details.
confused, because I thought that you guys said earlier that you had already assumed you weren't paying any permitting fees, and
Correct.
so it's not, that won't be included in the township.
That may already have been accounted for, so
Okay.
Okay,
if it was, then
so when we give the land to you for $1, it would be fully permitted and no fees for any town services to that land.
Well, it says municipal funding includes fee abatement.
yeah.
Yeah, do the,
Yeah,
yeah, that would, that would be.
We're clearly causing confusion and we need to fix that. That's our action to fix that.
And I have one more question. Is it possible to require that the house be sold at 60%?
I mean, from UHLC's perspective, their number's 80, as long as the property is sold to a family who earns less than 80% of AMI.
Yeah.
Do you sell it to someone who earns 10%? I mean, they're indifferent as long as it's not more than 80.
Well, the reason I asked.
The
is if
RFP
it's
said
sold-
maximum of 60.
Yeah, if it's sold for the 60, then that would be the 285 or something like that. That would reduce the town's nut considerably. And I think the reason that there's a lot of wiggle room there is because you were talking about it being between 30 and 60, and it might sell for less, which is why I'm asking if it's possible
We,
to give a set price so we can budget and decide what we're willing to.
we can answer that, but I'm not quite sure what E EOHLC will allow us to do as part of the market.
And ultimately set the
Yeah,
price.
they're very good. I'm a fan of MH, Mass Housing Partnership is really very helpful.
Yeah.
But EOHLC is extremely bureaucratic.
So, yeah, if you can get us that information, it would be helpful. I mean, personally speaking, just so you know where I'm coming from, and I'm only one member of this board, is I'm really uncomfortable putting another $145 into this deep hole that we've dug. And I understand what you're saying, our options are limited, but we can demo it and they can just sit there until things change, so that's sort of,
We're still be paying insurance, on it,
Yeah.
aren't we?
yeah, but it won't be
Oh,
much
fine.
because there's nothing on it. That's
It's just
hazard.
only another, yeah.
So-
So eventually it would, but.
Things
Eventually
change.
it just would be valuable.
Well, the regulations to facilitate the development of housing change. So we might be able to do
Okay.
something else there at some point. You know, so, but right now, you know, again, $400,000, give or take a few $1,000 is just a lot for us to pay on a single unit of housing. And, you know, so it'd be great if you could, I think one of the key issues is, you know, whether or not you can require it be sold for 60% rather than include that vagueness in there. Because again, that would reduce, I think, what the town's, what our obligation would be by probably, you know, to under $100,000.
Yeah, I understand, but isn't the bare minimum 60%?
No.
No?
No, it's 30 to 60%.
Oh, it is 30.
It's their maximum
Yeah.
for this, for these guys.
But
That's because you're charged.
That's Habitat's guidelines and
Yeah.
charter.
Oh, it has to be,
So I would expect
So the
that.
law is completely different. This is not selling it on the market.
That's not-
I understand that. I'm just saying though, if it could be higher than even 60% and 30% of something between 60 and 80 would be nicer.
But then your price.
But that might-
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
So the price that it ultimately sells for depends on the family that is
Yeah, yeah.
selected, what
Yeah.
their income is.
There's a lot of restrictions on.
Yeah,
It's
We
based on their
have to be
income.
very
It's-
careful about.
that's what I hear you saying.
So the
We have to be
question
very
is.
careful about excluding
Yeah.
people from the property, the selected buyers is actually chosen by lottery.
Yeah.
And all we can do is qualify people.
Yeah.
So we qualify them financially and such, so that I really qualify their ability to pay a mortgage, credit history, things of that sort.
We're just wondering if we can, you know, again, I understand that you
Well,
have
that's
a
the-
lot, but if you can do a lottery for a qualified people that can pay $265,000.
We can investigate whether we can set
Or 285.
the entry point to the lottery at 60% of AMI. I don't know if we can do that, but we can answer that question.
Yeah, because that might be a make or break issue.
Yep.
Quite frankly.
Oh, yeah.
I understand.
You know, and again, if you can get that other, you know, sort of the breakdown of costs and what you expect to be transferred to you or what you expect before the town puts in another third, what you expect from us to get.
Okay.
That would be really helpful.
Michael, what is the cost of, what would that land value be now in this town?
Oh, hard to say. I mean, I'm not an appraiser or the assessor, but my understanding of the market for a developable lot, I mean, I see them going from 150 to even like 250,000 these days. It's
That's size lot.
well, size doesn't necessarily add a lot of value, except but buildability does. Having it be, the fact that it's a lot that can sustain a building with regard to zoning and obviously other constraints regarding the land, given that this is already has a house on, it's already built upon it, you know, that assumes a base level of value. So I couldn't give you a square number.
Maureen, text Laura real quick. Text Laura.
About, real estate values?
Yeah,
Yeah,
0.69 acres, mostly wetlands, close to downtown.
Lots of ledge.
She knows where it is. Lots of- yeah.
Otherwise, it's great.
Does anyone else on the board have any? Yeah?
I'm sorry.
Oh, you raised your hand. I was just asking if anyone had any questions.
Oh, yes, yeah. I think there's two. Estimated soft cost. Hank, when you guys do the sources and uses in more detail, you'll break that out?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be helpful. I heard some of those related to the EOH submissions and other requirements, but
I think that may,
desperate looking for some other places that, yeah.
that cost may have actually been on top of what they provided. Soft cost, I think, just soft construction costs.
Okay.
I don't think that's included in these numbers.
Okay. And then the other is, what is the process if there's cost overruns, let's say inflation? How is that, what responsibility in these shares for the pie? Does it come back to what we agreed to here, if it's instead of 30%? Well, the amount could change, not the pie change.
Let's hope we don't have another pandemic.
Yeah.
That really messed things up.
We will.
Well, during the construction of this project.
Hmm.
Is there a contingency built in?
There is, so we do have a contingency, that's 465 number. But typically Habitat would absorb any upside.
That's been our process. We come to an agreement. We act, we behave like a general contractor unless there's some site conditions that the trust or the, you know, property owner didn't disclose or something like that. Which I don't think there are, but.
Yeah.
But one of the suggestions I would make, I mean, it might help the trust to be informed of what are the typical subsidies that are required to create rental housing per unit and ownership housing per unit. MHP can probably give you, if not MHP, then Central Mass Housing, Central Mass Planning Commission or Committee. One of those groups ought to be able to provide you with at least ballpark figures on what typically other housing trusts are the subsidies that are required to create affordable housing.
And did you say that relevant to this project or just in general?
Just in general, I mean,
Okay.
part of your concern is, geez, you feel like you're investing a lot of money and maybe it's not a good way to spend money. Again, living in Westboro, we put out a project which happens to be an 80% of AMI to a developer, single family home, tear down the existing home, build a new home on the site. The total subsidy cost to the trust will be between $210 and $225. Okay, and that's a piece of tax title property that we acquired for $50,000. Okay, so but if you get a $50,000 piece of property and your subsidy, and that's a fair market subsidy. You have a hard time, I believe you have a hard time getting units subsidized for less than that. You really need to talk to somebody beside myself. I'm not an expert. I just have this woodsy lore.
Excuse myself, I did jump on a call.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a good back and forth going and have that's probably gonna come back with some information to this trust.
Yeah.
And we can probably schedule another meeting after that to meet about it.
Sure.
Is there anything on the agenda after we decide?
Yes.
Which I don't think we need to do.
You should vote on executing the housing coordinator contract. You don't have to sign it. I'm just gonna have Joe sign it. I just emailed Grace about that.
Okay.
I might wrap up soon. I might be able to
Okay.
join you for the last minute of the meeting, but
Yeah, hopefully we can do that. Maureen, do you have anything to add to this? You've been uncharacteristically quiet.
Well, I have been listening very carefully and I would agree with getting market analysis, housing costs, anything like that. I agree with what Brian is saying and you were saying both.
I have some comments.
We can't make any decisions until we have all the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make some comments. I think it's a good idea to relook at the numbers and see what you can come up with. My feeling is, then it's probably not going to be what everybody else thinks, but we've already sunk these costs, they're gone. I mean, they went a long time ago. So I don't think we should even be considering that we spent 160,000 on it. It's neither here nor there at this point, from my perspective. My perspective is, I can't remember who said it. Maybe it's one of you guys, I can't remember. We have done nothing as an affordable housing trust, and there are lots of reasons for that, as Richard, is that right? Yeah. As Richard said, I get that. If we were to contract with Habitat to build this house, it will show that we are actually doing something. It's a model for people in town. I mean, everywhere you go in the world, you find resistance. It's the same in the UK. It's the same in the Pacific Northwest, where I was just now. Resistance from people. We aren't those kinds of people in our town. We don't want to build anything anywhere as long as it's. This is an opportunity for us to partner with Habitat to build a unit that will show that these people are just like us. I grew up in public housing. I know how this feels, being one of the others. And it's a good example of what we can do. We have no other properties available to us. What if we decide to buy some more land to build on? We're going to have to start from scratch again. We already have this property. Let's do something with it that is an example of what we can do. And as far as, from my perspective, we've already sunk that $200,000 into it. That's lost. Forget it.
Yeah, the thing is, I would disagree with you. I think from a public perception viewpoint, I disagree with you on 2 points. From a public perception viewpoint, if the town invests more than $400,000 in a single family house, that will reflect negatively on the commitment of our stewardship of public funds. But the other thing is we do have, and because the town has lots of land. And that's one of the things we sort of hesitated in doing because we've been really focused on trying to dispose of this project. So there are other parcels of land that I think we've touched on briefly, that we could look at to build any number, like, small houses, tiny houses, that little parcel, that long parcel next to Westboro. There's other parts, but we need to know what
Yeah.
we have as far as money goes before we need to have the time before we start really looking at those.
We have no idea how much this is going to cost anyway, do we?
Well, we do know that we have the land, so we don't have to buy the land.
Yeah, but we don't know what it would cost us to build it.
Well,
We have limited.
no, we wouldn't build it, our people.
No, I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Outside costs. I really do feel that, I would find it hard to believe that the town would hold the fact that the board bought this land in good faith. Was it 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
17.
Whenever it was. They would hold that
7 years
against us because we as a board, we're not responsible for purchasing that land. We own it. We've got to do something with it. We can't just keep on pushing the ball down the road and saying, we'll do something with when the conditions get better, whatever that means. If we're still going to be, it may only be a couple of $1,000s a year for insurance, but we're still responsible for that land. If something happens on that land, we're responsible for it. So my feeling is let's just get rid of it, show it an example of what we can do, assuming these guys can come back and reduce our costs. And just move on to something else. That's my feeling. I may not be what
I
everybody
think
else
that's,
says,
I think
but
that's similar to my feelings. But the thing is it's the amount that Upton has to put in more. Reduce that. And
Is there a target for that? Where would you
well,
feel?
we have not thrown that out. Everyone discussed that as a board. So I think coming back with the sources and use and really understanding that is to help with the public
perception.
perception.
It
that
could even be more than,
all the
I mean, if
differences.
it's 30 to 60, it could be more.
No, because they put in the max, they
Oh,
calculate.
that's the max, that's the max. Well, that's good.
So that's the
So
thing, if you
it
look
could
at the max
increase,
for housing sale and
Right.
deduct it from the,
it could increase our cost if it's the actual buyer is less.
That's what I'm
oh,
saying.
no, you guys said you put in, you factored
They
in the
put it at
max of 60%,
60%.
right?
All right,
Right,
so these are all set. So
so those numbers could,
It could be lower than 60, which would increase our cost even more.
Well, here's the habitat's cost.
That's the risk that we.
Oh, okay, so you're taking on that.
We take on the liability and.
No.
that's good to know.
That's good to know.
So if we could really, we don't have a target number, but I think
Yeah.
I would recommend that as part of, you're doing your homework, coming back, we need to do some homework on our side. Because I think, to Johnny's point, is that it's a huge win for us. And it's responsible for the town as in the cost of and what we're doing, is that we need to develop an advocacy campaign for that project, the larger project that we don't know what it is, but it's coming.
Yeah.
So that
We do.
the stepstones of, I think it lays out really
I'm
well.
cautious though, on perceiving it as a huge win in the mind of community members. I'm just thinking of, because I'm a president of another nonprofit, and at the end of the day, unless they care about how much they're spending, it's always about, I don't want to spend more money. Even if it's for their own kids,
Yeah.
they don't want to spend more money.
Yeah.
That is a huge. So that's why I get your.
house for $100,000.
That's where I get your point. I mean, have people like looking poor, although if we could, I don't know how we would advertise it, you have to show
They have
that big, like.
they have their big thing outside and you can have groundbreaking and not all of it. I mean, there's
Yeah,
We typically,
PR
we
is what it's all
typically
about.
run groundbreaking ceremonies and invite the community.
That's really good if the public.
Yeah,
they-
get involved in
PR stuff.
We
all right, so that's good. And most of them will tell me.
See, we're never going to win out those people who never want to spend a dime on anything. You're never going to win those. people.
Habitat has good PR.
Forget them.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it could raise the engagement. Dick is raising his hand again.
Oh, thank you.
This is what happens when you're not on the board, you have to wait for the rest of it.
That's all right.
I don't mind, you're doing a good job. One of the things that you have to worry about is the town finding out that you spent $400,000 on a house. And Habitat is holding the mortgage.
We're not gonna hold the mortgage third party. We, for a variety of reasons that have to do with the regulatory environment and banking law changes and things, we had to stop holding mortgages. So what we do is we do something similar to the UHLC one mortgage program. We subsidize the down payment. The down payment typically 3%, but we typically subsidize a third to a half of that. And we work with community banks to accept the mortgage at a greatly reduced interest rate. Today, we're probably using 5% plus or minus interest rates in a 7% plus or minus environment. That number changes quite a bit, but there are local banks with whom we have partnerships and we have worked with that need Community Reinvestment Act credits. There's a National Community Reinvestment Act that demands that banks reinvest in the communities where they do business. The banks are willing to give us below cost mortgages, and of course, sometimes we have to give them points. Sometimes we, Habitat, end up paying them points in order to get them to buy the mortgage, but we don't carry mortgages anymore. The legal complexity was beyond anything we could handle.
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more than that. After the 2008 debacle, a lot of the mortgage lending requirements and laws changed. We could no longer qualify as a mortgager.
Because I think the contract we have.
I have a question for the board. I just found out I have an emergency meeting at 1 o'clock with the state senator, so I'm gonna have to leave in about 10 minutes. We want to wrap up this conversation and wait until we get the information and then come back. Yes, let's do a decision. And then the next thing we have on the agenda is a vote to, contract, which I would take a motion to table that.
Thank you all very much for your
Thank
time
you.
and attention.
Thank you.
We'll be back with you. We really look
Yeah.
forward to
Thank you for
partnering with the community and doing some good for the affordable housing.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to meet you all.
It's okay. 2 minutes to figure out what the heck we're doing.
So,
Don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah.
okay. So yes, so do I hear a motion to table? Basically the next thing on the agenda was signing the contract, and we're not there yet with Habitat.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. See, now we have to do a roll call because you're not here.
What can I
So-
say?
So Maureen, how do you vote on a motion to table until the next meeting?
I, Maureen Dwinell.
You vote what?
She says aye, Maureen, she says aye.
Aye. I thought I said I'm Maureen without. Okay, Brian,
Aye. Brian Gallagher.
Gina,
Yeah, I,
Aye.
and me, aye. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is consummating the contract with CMRPC, the housing coordinator for 4 hours a week. I reviewed the job description. I think everyone else did, and the contract, and I'm fine with it. So does anyone have any discussion on it?
So Joe is the state me
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fine.
So, okay. So,
Yeah, that's just a point I'll just raise, and I don't want to answer it now, but I do think that we mature as a group, for us to understand what is the law. And we're a legal entity, we have our own funds, but the board is not signee on the contract. So just for us to think about in the future, and no one answer.
and we're also a trust. We're not a board, which puts us in a different legal
Right.
position.
Right, because this could just,
That's
this is not a big deal for this,
Yeah.
but in other decisions.
Yeah.
We need to make sure
Like
we
disposing
understand,
of
exactly.
I have an office. Have we or have the previous board reviewed grant writing to like much larger entities for affordable housing trusts?
like MHP. Dick, did you guys ever do it? Yeah, we haven't done it.
I mean, if anyone has time, currently doing that with youth.
Yeah.
taking a class, reviewing things, you know, when I have free time. Yeah, in the car.
I think in the contract of CMRPC,
Yeah.
that is one of the job responsibilities.
That I think could be a worthwhile avenue to get.
Yeah.
you know, Because there's a lot of money out there.
And I used to write housing grants for the Maine South Community Development Corporation. And we used to get millions, but the thing is, Worcester's a low income community. And it's a lot harder. for
Well,
us to get.
yeah, so I mean, all I'm learning when I'm like looking at the grants, it's kind of like publishing a paper, a science paper, right? You have to figure out what they want,
Yeah.
what the requirements are, what their deadlines are. And then just start going through the site, just, you know, going through the motions of the site, when I think they're a good way to raise some money.
So maybe, Grace and Michael could work at identifying some.
That would be good.
Not to belabor the point, but just to get back to the costs. You said, will the town tolerate the spending 400,000? Again, we've already spent.
Actually, there's another issue on the table right now.
Oh, sorry.
We're talking about
I thought we'd done that, so.
we're talking
Think
about the conservation contract and we do need a vote. So if there's no further discussion.
Then the other discussion is that, again, how many hours? Four to six?
Four.
Is, what is the mechanism, and I think maybe it's great for Michael to understand, how do we get those hours and how does, you see, but maybe she, every month when she comes in, or every meeting comes in, account for how many hours we have.
Yeah.
She has spent.
Yeah.
Supporting us.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we're gonna have to write them,
Mhm.
to make sure that our hours are committed to Upton and not to a group. So I agree that needs further definition. So,
Oh, yeah.
and we can always hear a motion that, we'll consummate the contract, on the condition that we get a breakdown of
Hours.
Yeah.
Hours,
they're counted.
yeah. So do I?
Make a motion that you approve the contract contingent upon the commitment of CMRPC to update the Affordable Housing Trust on each meeting of the hours spent supporting us. AHT.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second Maureen Dwinell.
We said,
Okay, aye, Maureen. Okay, any further discussion? Maureen? How do you vote?
L.I.
Brian,
Aye.
Gina,
Right.
Jeannie,
I,
and Catherine is aye, so it's unanimous. Is there anything else on the agenda, Grace, or is that it? Okay,
so can I just make my point now?
yes, you can make your point.
Sorry. You talk about $400,000. I think there's definitely a way to sell it to the town. We, with respect to Richard's crew, we didn't purchase this land. We've got stuck with it basically. And I know there are reasons why it couldn't get sold, pandemic and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, we own this land. So what's the best use of it? We have that money that was granted us at town meeting. I personally think using that money for this project is a very good use of it for all the reasons that I said previously. We will have an actual project, we will have an actual home that the Affordable Housing Trust has facilitated. That might not happen if we don't do this project with them. We're going to have to give the money back to the CPC, right?
No.
I thought you said we couldn't sell it to a.
No, we can't sell it unless we get what we put into it, but we can let it sit,
Okay.
which we bought, which you
Okay,
guys.
sorry, I misunderstood that.
So
I just think if we're an affordable housing trust, it's the sooner we can get some affordable housing to show that we're actually worth the money that the town's investing in us, the better. That's what I've got to say.
Can we investigate what it would cost to develop that other land a little bit, with your village idea of tiny homes or, because like how much money do we have? How much money are we gonna need and what are our sources of income? Can we look?
Yeah, right now, I think we have roughly, not us, but I think the CPC at about 700, 800 for affordable housing
That we can use.
that we can tap into.
Have substantial, they would have to say yes.
They would have to say yes.
Uh-huh.
And I'm now on the CPC.
Oh.
And how is that replenished? How does that work? How often is it replenished?
It's every year.
Every year.
It's 10%.
CPC the tax we get on our bills, there's a portion that goes for that.
Yeah.
And then the state also does a match. And then, once a year, the state grants out their portion.
And what happens?
I'm not sure, I guess each month it goes out.
We don't build, it just doesn't get, there's nothing to replenish, so it's not.
Just
replenished.
sits there.
Every year you,
Doing
you're paying your tax.
I know, but we don't spend the money.
It just sits there.
It keeps it.
It accumulates, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, all right.
And the other thing is there's this huge pool of, I think it's like 1.4, 1.5 million that anybody in town can, I mean, any historical renovation, recreation, conservation, or affordable trust, or affordable housing can tap into. So there's actually more money, but land acquisition.
Okay, and is this 400 cost include the 200 that was spent on this land?
Yes.
250, okay.
Oh, no, I mean,
You mean 400 to us?
okay, we have already taken, there's 700,000, or 800,000 left after all the money that's been taken out.
I know, I'm just saying, no, if, as far as selling the price tag to the community.
Yeah.
When they were talking about the cost to build.
Yeah.
Right, was it 450, they said, or
460.
460? That's 460 that we're, both organizations are paying for, or is that 460 we're responsible for?
No.
No, the
No.
460 is just divided into three parts. The
Okay.
460 is divided into the acquisition cost,
Yeah,
us, or the.
and that's, so that's where the 140,
Yeah, and then-
145,
And then
and that's gonna be 32
into private donation.
That they bought their land for.
So the max that we would have to pay.
Yeah.
In addition to what we've already paid is 145,000.
Okay, so 145 and 250, and that's what, yeah.
Forget.
But we could sell it, like, listen, this was land the town already owns, owns. This is separate, and we're paying, you know what I mean? It could be sold, it could be.
440,000 we're able to build it, yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm
You
saying.
got some cost and then.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying, so it could be sold in part.
I think it's a good look for the Affordable Housing Trust to sell the property there.
But I have to go, and we've kind of had the conversation.
Yes, it's that meeting time, date for the next.
Well, why don't we wait until we get the information back from
Okay, but
the.
it's summer room, bear that in mind.
Oh, I know. But I don't think anyone's going to change their plans, just, I mean, the schedule.
No, I don't do so.
Oh,
I should make sure we can be here.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
That was really what I was getting. at.
yeah, but it's, doesn't make sense to schedule a meeting till we get.
Yeah, but-
I just wanted to let you know, next time, if you want to schedule during the day, I can do Teams easily at my job, so.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, I could always remote
Yeah,
in.
that conversation.
I can't, no,
Yeah, no, it's just not days or time.
I can,
I think Maureen's trying to say something.
Yes,
Catherine, I just got notification from Laura, if it's with water and sewer, 200,000.
between what?
It would be around 200,000 with water and sewer conservatively.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.